Welcome to Pain in the Grass, the official Lawn Pride podcast, where we dig deep into the real problems hiding in your yard. From weeds to grubs to mystery brown spots, we've got the dirt. Let's grow better together.
You know, you'd think that with weeks of relentless heavy rain, you'd end up with the greenest lawn in Charlotte.
Right, because we just naturally view water as the ultimate life giver for plants.
Exactly. I mean, the assumption is that all these late spring downpours are doing your yard this massive favor. But if you look out your window right now, your grass is probably turning yellow, or maybe it's thinning out, or just lying completely flat.
Yeah, it's definitely a rough time for lawns.
So, okay, let's unpack this. Because basically, your yard is acting like an overwatered, potted houseplant sitting in a kitchen sink, and it is actively drowning.
It really is. I mean, it's a massive suffocation event, and it's happening right beneath our feet. We tend to focus so much on what's happening above ground. You know, the rainfall, the humidity, the puddles on your porch.
Right, the stuff we can see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the real crisis is totally subterranean.
So the goal of our deep dive today is to explore the provided research, just so we can understand the invisible mechanics of what this excess moisture is actually doing to your soil. We're going to look at why a deluge like this stresses turf just as severely as, like, a brutal summer drought.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll get into the specific subterranean steps you need to take right now before the July heat arrives and basically finishes the job.
Yeah, we definitely want to avoid that. So I think the best place to start is that sudden discoloration.
Right, the yellowing.
Yeah. That yellowing of the grass blade is usually the very first alarm bell for a homeowner. And it just seems so counterintuitive that a plant getting, an abundance of water would suddenly look so sickly.
It does. But the sources explain this beautifully by breaking down how root systems actually function. I mean, we think roots just act like straws, right? Just passively sucking up water.
That's what I always pictured, yeah.
But they actually have to perform active respiration. They need oxygen in the soil to convert stored sugars into energy. And then they use that energy to actively pump nutrients inside.
Okay, so they need air to eat.
Exactly. So when you have endless rain saturating the ground, the water physically fills every single tiny pocket of space in the dirt. It completely displaces the air.
Wow, okay, so the oxygen levels around the root zone just plummet.
Down to near zero. And without oxygen, that respiration process you mentioned simply shuts down. The roots are sitting in this massive surplus of water, but they are literally suffocating.
So they weaken and just stop absorbing vital nutrients. They're starving to death while swimming in water.
That is exactly what's happening. And what's fascinating here is that the research points out another layer to this problem. The rain isn't just stopping the roots from eating. It's actively stealing the food that's already there.
Wait, really? Stealing it how?
Well, the constant deluge of heavy rain physically flushes the highly water-soluble nutrients, specifically nitrogen, right out of the soil as runoff.
Oh, man. So the water just carries the nitrogen away into the storm drains before the plant can even attempt to use it.
Exactly. It's this double blow to the plant's biological system.
Okay, looking at the mechanics of this, if the nitrogen is just being washed away by the rain, shouldn't you just, run out to the hardware store, grab a big bag of fertilizer, and dump it all over the yellow grass?
I mean, that feels like the most logical fix, right?
Yeah, just replace what was lost.
It is the exact instinct most people have. But applying fertilizer right now is basically throwing money down a storm drain.
Because the roots can't take it up anyway?
Right, because those root systems are essentially shut down from the lack of oxygen. Adding more chemical fertilizer won't help the plant at all. The biological pumps are totally offline.
So the grass physically cannot take those chemicals in?
Exactly. So the fertilizer just sits on the surface until, the next afternoon thunderstorm washes it away too.
Just adding to toxic runoff in the local water supply without doing a single beneficial thing for your turf.
Yeah, it's bad. So the yellowing isn't a lack of hydration, and it's not a lack of surface level fertilizer. It is a fundamental structural failure in the soil.
And The documentation notes that in the Charlotte area, this is heavily compounded by the native geology. We are dealing with heavy clay soil.
Oh, the clay. Yeah, it inherently acts like a giant, non-draining bathtub.
Right, because the clay particles are microscopic and so tightly packed together,
Yeah.
they hold on to water far longer than sandy soils do.
They do. But the notes highlight a human element making this bathtub effect significantly worse, and that is soil compaction.
Okay, let's talk about compaction. How does that happen?
Well, over the course of a year, a lawn takes a serious physical beating. Think about heavy foot traffic from kids or dogs, or the sheer downward weight of a riding lawnmower rolling over the exact same tracks week after week.
So all that pressure just pushes down on the natural density of the clay.
Yes, it compresses the earth, literally collapsing the microscopic pore spaces between the dirt particles. It forms this solid, tight barrier.
So it's the difference between trying to pour a bucket of water through a kitchen sponge versus pouring it over a concrete brick.
That is a perfect analogy. When the spring rains hit that compacted, brick-like surface, the water cannot drain downwards into the water table. It just pools.
And because the soil is so tightly packed, the grass roots face a physical barrier too, right?
Exactly. They struggle to expand and grow deeper, so they remain incredibly shallow. You end up with highly stressed turf, completely trapped in the top 2 inches of the ground.
I see people do this all the time. They frantically search the internet for soggy lawn solutions, trying to fix the visual symptoms on the surface.
Oh yeah, they buy different sprinklers or fancy top dressings.
But the actual crime scene is underground. Like, if you walk outside hours after a storm, the sun is shining, but there are still puddles lingering in your yard. Compaction is the invisible culprit.
The soil has entirely lost its porosity. And because those roots are trapped near the surface in shallow pools of warm water, we're not just looking at a drowning plant anymore.
Right, it gets worse.
Much worse. We're looking at a massive, yard-sized petri dish. The sources point out that this exact environment is what triggers huge fungal outbreaks.
You combine the high atmospheric temperatures of late spring with constant lingering moisture, and you basically roll out the red carpet for disease.
You really do. Fungal spores that are always dormant in the soil suddenly have the perfect conditions to explode. They multiply across a yard almost overnight.
And the symptoms can look like a total horror movie for your lawn. You'll see these yellow or brown circular patches appearing out of nowhere, expanding rapidly.
Yeah, and there might be areas of thin or completely matted down grass that look wilted, which is so confusing because the ground is soaking wet.
Right. Why does it look wilted if it's flooded?
Because the fungus is literally destroying the vascular system of the grass. So the blades look like they're dying of thirst, even though they're underwater.
That is wild. And here's where it gets really interesting. The documentation points out a very specific, almost bizarre symptom to watch for the grass blades taking on a strange, dark, greasy appearance in the early morning.
Ugh, the greasy blades. Those greasy lesions are the active fungal mycelium breaking down the plant tissue. It's highly infectious.
I was looking at the notes on the specific turf types grown in this region, particularly tall fescue. And fescue seems incredibly vulnerable right now.
It is. See, tall fescue is a cool season grass, and the Charlotte area sits right in what agronomists call the transition zone.
So it's not totally meant for this climate?
Biologically, no. Tall fescue inherently struggles with the intense heat and thick humidity of North Carolina. A cool season grass actually expends more energy trying to survive warm, humid nights than it can produce through photosynthesis during cloudy, rainy days.
So it enters a biological deficit. It's running on empty, just trying to stay alive.
Exactly. So when you add standing water, suffocating roots, and explosive fungal pressure, the plant just doesn't have the internal reserves to fight off an infection. It collapses.
Okay, but my initial assumption was that Bermuda grass would be totally fine. I mean, it's a warm season grass that loves the heat.
You'd think so, but the data shows that if the drainage is bad because of that compaction we discussed, even Bermuda gets hit with specific diseases. Things like dollar spot and spring dead spot.
Wow, okay. So no grass is totally safe.
No. While Bermuda recovers faster than fescue, standing water weakens its immune system just the same. And if we connect this to the bigger picture, ignoring these early warning signs, brushing off those greasy blades or those expanding brown circles as just an ugly spring phase, it allows the fungus to compromise the entire crown of the plant.
And by the time the massive summer heat arrives, the compromised turf just dies entirely, which can mean thousands of dollars of damage.
Right. And you know what the immediate instinct is when a homeowner walks outside and sees this?
Ah.
The grass is 6 inches long because it's been raining for weeks. It's turning yellow. It looks ragged.
Oh, I know. The instinct is, the rain finally paused. I need to get the mower out right now and tidy this up.
Exactly. But the source material outlines exactly why mowing wet grass violently exacerbates every single problem we've discussed.
I mean, just dragging the heavy tires of a mower over already saturated muddy soil massively increases the compaction problem we just covered, right?
Yes. You are packing that wet clay down even tighter, sealing off whatever microscopic air pockets might have been left.
And beyond the tires, the actual cutting mechanism becomes incredibly destructive because wet blades of grass do not cut cleanly even if you have a high-end mower.
They really don't. Instead of a sharp slice, the mower blade bends and violently tears the wet vascular tissue of the plant.
So you get these massive, jagged, open wounds on every single blade of grass in your yard.
Which forces the plant to expend precious energy trying to heal the damage instead of fighting off stress. And wet clippings don't disperse easily from the mower deck either.
Right, they clump up.
Exactly. They clump together into dense, heavy mats that drop down and literally smother the living turf below. It blocks out whatever sunlight is available and traps even more moisture directly against the soil.
Which brings us to probably the worst part, the disease spread.
Oh, yeah.
If you have any fungal disease, starting like those greasy blades we mentioned, running a mower through that wet, diseased grass is basically weaponizing your equipment.
It really is. The mower jack aerosolizes the fungal spores. It acts as a high-speed transit system, spreading the infection from one small patch across every single inch of your entire yard.
You are physically inoculating your healthy grass with the disease.
This is why the sources provide very strict, smart wet weather mowing tips. The absolute golden rule being patience. You must wait until the lawn is as dry as visibly possible.
Okay, but wait, let me push back on that on behalf of the listener. Because if we are in a weather pattern where it rains heavily every single afternoon for 3 straight weeks, waiting for a completely dry lawn is basically impossible.
That's a fair point.
The glass is going to get 8 inches tall and invite a whole different set of pest problems. So what is the actual real-world compromise here?
It's a tough spot, definitely.
Okay.
But the compromise is risk mitigation. First, avoid mowing during peak morning humidity. Try to mow in the late afternoon when the sun has had a few hours to bake off the surface canopy moisture.
Even if the soil itself is still a bit damp.
Yes, exactly. Second, ensure your mower blades are sharpened, and not just once a season, but frequently. A razor-sharp blade minimizes that tearing effect on damp grass.
Makes sense.
Third, raise your mower deck to its highest setting.
So you don't scalp it back down to its normal aesthetic height all at once.
Right. Never remove more than 1/3 of the total grass height in a single cut. I mean, chopping 6 inches of wet grass down to 2 inches removes the majority of the plant's photosynthetic tissue in one violent swoop.
That would send an already starving, suffocating plant into deep shock.
Exactly. Cut 1/3 off. Let the clippings act as a lighter mulch or bag them if they're clumping. Wait a few days for the plant to recover, and then cut it again to step it down.
Okay, so we are practicing patience. We are raising the deck and keeping the blades sharp. But, modifying our mowing behavior only mitigates the surface damage.
Right. It doesn't fix the core issue.
Exactly. It still leaves us with the underlying crisis. The soil is a brick-hard clay bathtub, and the roots are suffocating. We have to actually fix the root cause.
And this is where the source material introduces a subterranean solution. For these specific moisture and compaction problems in heavy clay, the primary recommendation is a process called liquid aeration.
Let's focus on that, because when most people hear aeration, they picture traditional core aeration.
Oh, sure, the heavy mechanical machine that drives over the lawn.
Yeah, the one punching thousands of physical holes in the dirt, pulling out those little brown plugs of soil that look like goose droppings.
Goose droppings, yes. Mechanical aeration definitely has its place. But trying to drive a heavy core aerator over saturated, muddy spring clay will simply tear your lawn to shreds and sink the machine into the mud.
That makes sense. So liquid aeration is an entirely different approach that treats the soil structure chemically.
Yes.
Wait, if we aren't punching physical holes, how do the liquid actually force dense, packed clay to separate? Is it a chemical reaction?
It absolutely is a chemical reaction. Liquid aeration products utilize specialized soil conditioning compounds. They often rely heavily on things like humic and fulvic acids.
Okay, how does that work on the clay?
Think about clay particles at a microscopic level. They're shaped like tiny flat dinner plates, and they stack tightly on top of each other, binding together.
And that tight stacking is what prevents water from flowing through.
Right. So how does the liquid break up the dinner plates? Well, these humic acid compounds have a high cation exchange capacity.
Meaning they hold a charge.
Exactly. When you spray them onto the soil and they percolate down with the rainwater, they introduce negative charges that interact with the clay particles. They basically force those tightly bound plates to chemically repel each other.
Oh, wow.
As the particles push away from one another, they create billions of microscopic pores throughout the soil profile.
So it fundamentally changes the structure. It turns the concrete brick back into a porous sponge.
Yes. The moment those microscopic pores open up, the bathtub drains. Water can finally penetrate deeply into the earth rather than pooling in the top 2 inches.
And by letting the water drain away from the root zone, you dramatically increase the oxygen flow back to those suffocating roots.
The biological pumps turn back on.
The grass can finally breathe, which means it can finally use that energy to take up nutrients again.
Exactly. And because the soil below is now loose and porous rather than compacted, those roots aren't trapped near the surface anymore. They naturally follow the draining water downwards, growing much deeper into the earth.
Which is what you want.
Absolutely. Healthier, deeper roots equate to a resilient turf. A lawn with deep roots can survive this excess rain without drowning. And crucially, it can survive the impending shock of North Carolina's brutal summer heat.
Right, because when the rain finally stops in July and we get 3 straight weeks of 95-degree heat with baked topsoil, shallow roots will just fry.
They don't stand a chance. But roots that have been encouraged to grow deep through liquid aeration can access moisture reserves further underground.
It's all about building structural resilience below the surface to handle the extreme swings of the transition zone.
You nailed it.
Looking at this entire cause and effect journey is just incredibly revealing. You get a deluge of spring rain, and it heavily saturates that dense Charlotte clay.
Right.
That standing water acts as a suffocating barrier, dropping oxygen levels and shutting down the roots while actively flushing out vital nutrients.
And then you have this starving, weakened grass sitting in a humid petri dish, which creates an explosive breeding ground for fungal diseases.
It's a perfect storm, and the worst reaction is the instinctual one, panic mowing wet grass with dull blades.
Which just compacts the soil further, tears the weakened plant tissue, and aerosolizes the disease across the entire property.
But the smartest reaction is early subterranean action. You tackle the poor drainage and the clay compaction at the molecular level with a chemical liquid aeration.
Forcing those tightly bound particles to repel each other.
You get the bathtub draining, you get those roots breathing, and you get them growing deep before the summer stress peaks.
You really have to intervene at the root level to stop the chain reaction. If you just chase the surface symptoms, the environment will win every time.
It really makes you look at a rainstorm totally differently. And, it actually brings up a final thought, something we haven't explicitly touched on today, but it just kind of hangs over the entirety of this research.
Oh, yeah. What's that?
Well, if these heavy clay soils and these constant torrential spring rains are this inherently hostile to a meticulously cultivated modern lawn,
Right.
I mean, if keeping this grass alive requires high-tech liquid chemical aeration to alter the soil structure and incredibly strict rules-based mowing schedules and constant vigilant monitoring for greasy fungal outbreaks, it really makes you wonder about the native plant ecosystems of North Carolina.
Oh, that is a great point. The native flora evolved over millennia to thrive in these exact same deluge conditions.
Exactly. They rely on deep, aggressive root systems that naturally break up heavy clay without any chemical assistance from us.
They don't need us to spray them with conditioners or raise our mower decks or sharpen our blades to avoid shocking them.
No, they don't. Perhaps the ultimate lesson here isn't just about learning the tactical chemistry of how to fight the water and force the clay to adapt to the grass.
Right.
Maybe it's also about questioning the types of non-native, highly sensitive grass we force to live in an environment that is constantly trying to drown it.
It's a profound shift in perspective. You really have to ask yourself if you are working to integrate with the natural environment, or if you're simply funding an endless battle against it.
It is definitely something to think about the next time you look out the window at the heavy rain. Because right now, if you've got that overwatered houseplant of a lawn sitting out there suffocating in a clay bathtub, well, you know exactly what the invisible mechanisms are beneath the surface, and you know exactly the chemistry required to get the swamp draining.
Thank you for listening to the Pain in the Grass podcast, sponsored by Lawn Pride of North Charlotte, Huntersville. your go-to name in turf care for homeowners and businesses seeking beauty, quality, and reliability. Powered by family and fueled by passion. Until next time, make sure to take care of that pain in the grass.